You believe others care about your struggles, your dreams, your pain. They do not. And the longer you cling to this illusion, the weaker you become. In this lesson, I will strip away that weakness and show you the brutal freedom hidden in indifference. The world is not tender. It is indifferent. Men smile at your words only when they profit from them, and they weep at your misfortune only when it serves their image. To accept that no one cares is not despair, it is liberation. For once you abandon the expectation of pity, you begin to see life as it truly is, a battlefield where those who rely on others perish, and those who stand alone rise. Today, we shall examine why indifference is not your enemy, but your greatest weapon. You want to know why you suffer? Because you still expect others to care. It is the most common illusion of men, that the world shares in their burdens, that friends, family, even strangers, will rally to their side when the storm begins. But when the rain falls, and when the winds tear through your house, you quickly see the truth. They may glance in your direction. They may even sigh. But then they move on, consumed by their own troubles. What lesson lies in this indifference? Freedom. Think of the Roman general who marched his soldiers into hostile lands. Did he expect mercy from the enemy? Did he trust pity to shield him from swords? No. He accepted that none cared for his survival but himself. And in this acceptance, he found clarity. The soldier who knows he is alone fights harder than the one who waits for rescue. You too must learn to see through the performance of concern. Men speak kindly, yes, but kindness is currency. They give it when it buys them influence, admiration, or some advantage. Strip away the mask and what remains cold indifference. Does this sound cruel? Perhaps. But cruelty is not the right word. It is simply the nature of things. Do you blame the fire for burning, or the wolf for hunting? Then why blame men for caring only when it suits them? Once you accept this, your dependence dissolves. Psychology confirms it. Studies reveal that humans are wired to preserve their own survival above all. Even empathy often disguises self-interest. Helping others makes the helper feel significant, righteous, or admired. Remove those rewards, and the concern vanishes. Here lies your first step toward power. Abandon the expectation that anyone will carry you. Think of the ruler who waits for allies to defend his throne. He is weak. His fate rests in the hands of others. But the ruler who prepares his walls, trains his soldiers, and relies only on his own treasury, he is untouchable. You are that ruler. Your life is your kingdom. Your mind is your fortress. And every time you beg for others to care, you leave your gates unguarded. Ask yourself, how many times have you felt betrayed, not because someone attacked you, but because they did not care enough to protect you? The betrayal was not their action. It was your expectation. A clever man expects nothing. Consider this: when you truly know that no one cares, what harm can indifference do to you? None. You cannot be disappointed. You cannot be manipulated with false promises of loyalty. You cannot be shattered by silence. This is why indifference is power. For the man who expects nothing is never wounded, yet always prepared. History teaches this mercilessly. Princes who trusted the love of their subjects often fell. Those who trusted fear, control, and their own arms endured. Love is fickle, for it depends on others. Fear and self-reliance lie within your command. Now reflect on your daily life. Do you wait for encouragement before you act? Do you hesitate because no one has praised you? If so, you are already enslaved to the care of others. Your worth is chained to their attention, but when you grasp that their care is shallow, you cut the chain. You rise earlier. You act without applause. You move in silence, not because anyone watches, but because you know the world is indifferent, and thus you owe it nothing. Even manipulation becomes easier once you see this truth. The man who knows others care little can predict them. He understands that when they act kind, it is because something is to be gained. He does not mistake the gesture for loyalty. He accepts it as strategy and plays his own. And ask yourself this: is it not better to live in a world of clear motives than in a fog of false compassion? When you no longer expect care, every kindness becomes a tool, every silence a reminder of your independence. You cannot be swayed by disappointment, for you never waited to begin with. This, then, is your liberation, to be untouched by indifference, to be freed from disappointment, to walk through the world unshaken, because you already know no one cares, and in this knowledge you are stronger than the man who still begs for sympathy. But strength breeds transformation, and transformation has consequences. When you embrace indifference fully, what happens next? That we will uncover in the next lesson. Power is not measured by how many care for you. It is measured by how little you must depend on their care. The weak man builds his life upon the approval of others. He waits for validation before he acts. He seeks comfort in the applause of friends or the pity of strangers. But the strong man understands such approval is a luxury, not a necessity. The true currency of power is self-reliance. Consider the city-state that begs allies for protection. Its survival depends not on its own arms, but on promises that may be broken at the first sign of profit. History shows us how quickly allies abandon the desperate. Florence trusted France once and nearly lost everything when the French king saw more advantage elsewhere. Dependency is debt, and debt makes you a slave. So too in your own life, every time you beg for validation, you go into debt. You surrender your sovereignty. You trade the crown of your independence for the fleeting smile of another. Ask yourself, how many times have you silenced your true thoughts because you feared disapproval? How many times have you waited for someone's encouragement before pursuing a goal? Each of those moments is proof that you are not free. You are a vassal, waiting for permission to exist. But what happens when you stop? When you cease begging for scraps of attention, you discover a hidden wealth, the ability to stand alone. This is a wealth no man can steal from you. The approval of others is fickle. Your own strength, once cultivated, is permanent. Psychology reveals this truth with precision. Studies on self-determination show that individuals who draw motivation from within, rather than from external rewards, are more resilient, more creative, and ultimately more successful. Why? Because they cannot be bought with the cheap currency of praise. Their fuel is their own conviction. The ruler who relies on mercenaries is doomed. Mercenaries fight for pay, not loyalty. They scatter when danger grows. But the ruler who arms his own people, who depends on his own treasury, stands firm even when abandoned by all others. You must learn to be your own army. When you make your self-worth dependent on others, you invite manipulation. The world sees your hunger for validation, and it feeds you just enough to keep you obedient. Think of the employer who praises you only when he needs more work, or the lover who withholds affection to keep you desperate. If your worth depends on their approval, you are their pawn. But when your worth depends only on your own judgment, the manipulation ends. You cannot be starved of what you no longer need. And here lies the paradox: the moment you no longer seek approval, people begin to give it freely. Why? Because independence is rare, and men admire what they cannot control. The one who is indifferent to praise commands it. The one who refuses validation receives it in abundance. Do you see the pattern? The desperate man, always asking for recognition, repels it. The self-reliant man, who walks without applause, attracts it. But he is not seduced, for he knows the truth: approval is not wealth. It is theater. Reflect on this carefully. Each time you act from within, without permission, without applause, you mint your own coin of power. Each time you refuse to beg, you grow richer. The beggar may gather coins in his cup, but he is never free. The sovereign may hold fewer coins in hand, yet every coin is his own. Which would you rather be? You must build this sovereignty daily. Rise without waiting for encouragement. Speak without waiting for permission. Act without waiting for applause. In time, your independence will shine through everything you do. And here is the secret: once you have built such wealth, no one can bankrupt you. If tomorrow the world turned its back, you would remain unbroken, because your strength is minted in the only currency that never loses value: self-reliance. This is why the most powerful appear cold. They do not need your pity. They do not need your praise. They walk alone, not because they are unloved, but because they are unchained. And when you too free yourself from the prison of validation, you will understand the intoxication of true independence. But beware, self-reliance changes not only how you see yourself, but how others see you. Some will admire, others will fear, and some will plot to destroy what they cannot control. The question is, when your independence threatens their control, will you be ready? Most people believe apathy is weakness. They think indifference means disinterest, passivity, or lack of control. They are wrong. Apathy, when understood, is not weakness. It is opportunity. For in every man's indifference lies a hidden lever of power. Think carefully when someone pretends to care. Is it because their heart is truly stirred? Rarely. Sympathy is often theater. It is a performance given when the audience is watching. Men cry at funerals not always for the dead, but to prove to the living that they possess compassion. Strip away the stage, and the tears vanish. Here lies the lesson. If sympathy is performance, then apathy is truth. And the wise man does not fight against apathy. He bends it to his use. History is filled with rulers who understood this. Consider Caesar. He knew that most senators cared little for Rome itself. They cared for their estates, their honors, their survival. He exploited this indifference to the Republic by offering what truly mattered to them: security, wealth, position. He did not waste time appealing to love of country. He bought their loyalty with the currency of their apathy. Do you see the strategy? When you recognize that most people care only for themselves, you no longer waste breath trying to move them with noble ideals. You speak instead to their selfish silence. You promise safety to the fearful, profit to the greedy, status to the vain. Their indifference to you personally becomes irrelevant, because you have made them actors in your play, whether they feel passion or not. Now turn this lesson toward your own life. How many times have you felt insulted when someone ignored your struggle? You expected care, but received silence. That silence, if you are clever, is not an insult. It is leverage. A man's silence reveals where his true interests do not lie. And once you know what he does not care about, you can predict exactly where his desires are strongest. Psychology confirms this. People reveal themselves not in what they claim to value, but in what they consistently ignore. The friend who never listens when you speak of your ambitions, but grows alert at the mention of money, has shown you where his loyalty can be purchased. The colleague who is unmoved by appeals to fairness, but quick to act when his reputation is at stake, has told you the exact coin by which he may be manipulated. Indifference is not a wall, it is a map. Ask yourself, why do so many fail in persuasion? Because they appeal to what they value, not what the other man values. They beg for sympathy where there is none. They seek loyalty in the soil of apathy. And then they cry betrayal when in truth, they betrayed themselves by not reading the signs. A master of power does the opposite. He listens carefully to the silences. He studies what is ignored. He watches where eyes wander, where attention drifts, where concern evaporates. Then, instead of resenting apathy, he exploits it. Imagine you wish to rise in a company. You notice your superior is indifferent to moral arguments, but cares deeply for efficiency. Do you lecture him on fairness? Or do you cloak your ambition in the language of productivity so that your rise appears as service to his obsession? The answer is clear. This principle has governed empires. Nations do not care for abstract justice. They care for survival, pride, wealth. Leaders who appeal to ideals often fall, while those who exploit the people's true indifference to ideals, offering instead bread, security, or conquest, endure. Cold, yes, but effective. Now, reflect again. When someone does not care about you, do you despair, or do you study the silence for clues? Because indifference is never empty. It always points to the true center of a person's self-interest. Here is the psychological edge. Once you accept that no one cares about your struggles, you stop wasting time begging. Instead, you redirect your energy to understanding what they care about. And once you know that, you hold the strings. For apathy is a mask. Behind it always hides desire. Learn to pierce the mask, and you can predict, persuade, and control those who once seemed unreachable. So, what is your choice? Will you keep cursing the cold silence of others, or will you learn to bend it into your weapon? Remember, it is not passion that rules men, but self-interest. And apathy is the shadow that reveals exactly where that self-interest lies. But beware, if you master this art, if you learn to exploit apathy, you step onto dangerous ground. For once you see people as they truly are, you can never unsee it. And in the next lesson, we will explore what happens when you embrace this cold realism fully. When freedom from illusion becomes your only shield. Illusion is the sweetest poison. It tastes like hope, but it kills like weakness. Most men live in illusion because it comforts them. They believe the world is just, that truth will prevail, that kindness will be repaid. And because they cling to these fantasies, they are constantly deceived, disappointed, and broken. But the few who strip these illusions away, who embrace cold realism, gain a freedom others will never know. Ask yourself what enslaves you more, the harsh truth of reality or the constant cycle of expecting kindness and receiving betrayal? Which chains cut deeper, the iron chains of reality or the silk chains of false hope? When you accept that the world is cruel, you stop being surprised by cruelty. When you accept that men act out of self-interest, you stop being crushed when their loyalty falters. And when you accept that life itself is indifferent to your suffering, you stop waiting for mercy that will never come. This is freedom. History provides countless examples. Consider the Florentine states that trusted in treaties, believing words would shield them from steel. Their illusion blinded them, and they fell when their so-called allies turned against them. Contrast this with leaders who assumed betrayal from the beginning. They fortified their cities, armed their men, and planned for treachery. They looked at the world not as they wished it to be, but as it truly was, and thus they survived. The same applies to your own life. How often have you given someone trust, believing their words without proof? How often have you been wounded because you thought they would never do such a thing? These are the cries of men still chained by illusion. The realist never utters them. He is never surprised by betrayal, because betrayal was his expectation all along. Psychology confirms what history teaches. People are not rational angels, they are creatures of bias, fear, and desire. Their moral principles bend easily under pressure. A man who swears loyalty today may abandon you tomorrow if the cost of loyalty becomes too high. The realist sees this not as tragedy, but as inevitability. Now, why does this bring freedom? Because illusions create weakness. If you believe men are naturally good, every act of treachery devastates you. If you believe life is fair, every misfortune feels like injustice. But if you see the world as it is, harsh, self-serving, indifferent, then nothing surprises you. Nothing breaks you. This freedom is not softness. It is armor. Imagine a soldier who believes every battle will be easy. The first arrow that pierces the air shatters him. But the soldier who trains for hardship, who expects hunger, mud, and blood, he fights on without hesitation. Reality does not defeat him because he never expected anything else. So too with you. When you abandon illusions, you become untouchable. You cannot be manipulated with false promises because you never believed promises to begin with. You cannot be devastated by indifference because you already assumed no one cared. You cannot be broken by misfortune because you built your life on the assumption that misfortune is constant. This is why cold realism feels harsh to those still living in illusion. To them, it seems bleak. But to the one who has embraced it, it is liberation. For he no longer lives in disappointment, he lives in clarity. Think of the man who relies on luck. Each failure crushes him because he believed he deserved success. Contrast him with the realist, who knows that fortune is fickle and must be mastered through preparation, cunning, and resilience. When bad fortune strikes, he adjusts, not complains. When good fortune smiles, he takes advantage without illusion that it will last forever. This is true freedom, not to be ruled by fortune, not to be blinded by hope, but to walk through life awake, armed, and unbroken. But beware, realism will isolate you. Most people cannot bear the weight of truth. They will call you cynical, cold, or ruthless. Why? Because your clarity threatens their illusions, and people will always defend their illusions more fiercely than they defend reality. Yet remember, their illusions are cages. Yours is freedom. Now reflect. What kind of life do you prefer? To live blinded by comforting lies, or to walk alone, cold but free? Do you choose the chains of sweet illusion or the armor of bitter truth? This choice will shape your destiny. But what happens once you embrace this armor completely? When isolation transforms you into something more dangerous than mere realist, when solitude itself becomes the source of your power. That is the next lesson. Solitude is feared by the weak. They see isolation as abandonment, as proof that no one values them. They drown in silence because they crave noise, applause, and comfort. But for the strong, isolation is not prison, it is transformation. Consider the ruler who surrounds himself with flatterers. He may feel secure, wrapped in praise and constant company. But he is blind. The voices around him are not truth. They are manipulation. The moment fortune shifts, his friends vanish. Contrast him with the ruler who withdraws, who learns to govern without depending on others' affection. He may stand alone, but he stands unshaken. Ask yourself, which are you becoming? The ruler of illusions or the sovereign of solitude? Isolation changes a man because it forces him to face the raw truth of himself. Most people never know who they are, because they are always reflected in the eyes of others. Their worth rises and falls with attention, like a puppet on strings. But when you step into isolation, the strings are cut. There is no one left to tell you who you are. You must decide. This decision is terrifying, and yet it is the birth of power. History proves it. Think of exiles and prisoners who returned stronger than when they left. Leaders cast out by their rivals often used isolation to sharpen their strategy. They emerged not broken, but dangerous. Stripped of company, they learned to think without interference, to plan without distraction, to harden themselves against dependence. Even psychology confirms what rulers have always known: solitude sharpens focus. Studies show that people in isolation become more self-reliant, more reflective, and less bound by social pressures. Freed from constant approval seeking, they gain clarity of thought, and with clarity comes control. Isolation is the crucible where weakness burns away. But you must choose how to endure it. Some waste solitude by drowning in self-pity. They curse the silence. They pray for someone to return. These are the ones who collapse. But the man who embraces silence, who studies it, who allows it to refine him, he emerges with a new kind of authority. Imagine this transformation in yourself. You no longer need constant messages, constant validation, constant companionship. You rise in the morning, not because someone expects it, but because you command yourself. You pursue goals, not because anyone applauds, but because you know they are yours. And here is the secret: when others sense that you do not need them, they begin to need you. Why? Because independence is rare. Most people are enslaved by their hunger for attention. They admire, even envy, the one who walks alone. They cannot fathom a man who thrives without approval, so they chase him, hoping his strength will spill onto them. Thus, isolation becomes influence. But beware, your independence will not only inspire admiration, it will also breed fear. People fear what they cannot control. When they see that you do not bend to their approval, they will call you arrogant. When they see you thrive in silence, they will call you cold. They will attempt to draw you back into dependence, to weaken you. Here lies the true test. Will you surrender your solitude for their comfort, or will you hold to the transformation it has given you? Remember, men envy freedom because they do not possess it. They will try to bind you again, not always out of malice, but because your independence reminds them of their own chains. So stand firm. Isolation has made you sovereign. Think of the fortress on a hill. Alone, it may appear vulnerable, but in truth it is impregnable, for it relies on its own walls. So too with you. Alone, you may appear abandoned, but in reality, you are untouchable, for you rely only on yourself. And when the world comes knocking, demanding your attention, you will decide, not them, when to open your gates. This is the transformation. You cease being a beggar of sympathy and become an architect of destiny. You move from dependence to dominance, from needing the crowd to commanding it, from fearing solitude to ruling through it. But ask yourself one final question once you have become this fortress, this sovereign of silence. How do you wield such power? Do you cloak it to survive, or do you reveal it to conquer? That is the choice awaiting you in the next lesson. Power is never taken openly. It is taken in silence, in shadows, while others believe they are free. The greatest control is not when men know they are ruled, but when they believe they are acting by choice, even as every decision serves your hand. That is the essence of invisible domination. Do you understand the weight of this? When you learn to read indifference, exploit apathy, and walk armed with cold realism, you become untouchable. You bend people not with chains, but with illusions. And the most dangerous power of all is the power unseen. So reflect. Will you remain at the mercy of others' expectations, or will you master the hidden art of influence, guiding men without their knowledge? If this lesson struck you, leave your thoughts below. Tell me how you see power now. Subscribe if you wish to continue sharpening your mind with strategies most will never dare to confront, and share this message, so others may glimpse what you already know, that control belongs to the unseen hand. The choice, as always, is yours.